introduce the concept, which is a buyer buys something, seller receives an order, and then there's, let's say, a reconciliation of sorts that needs to occur, whether it be I need an MTR, or I need, this is the wrong material, wrong amount, wrong whatever. We're putting in this next version the ability for the users to handle that themselves, where there's not a need. You'll do it through our platform, but there's no need to contact us directly. We're here, but really you probably want to talk to the person who can affect your future, right? So the idea being, how do we do that in a way that's responsible? Because part of the reason people like this is because that doesn't occur. You're not getting bombarded with, sort of a peaceful existence inside of here where you don't have sort of all that going on. So one way we could do this is that there's just a chat feature where it's just open, and you could text them like, hey, what's going on with my order? Even before it delivers, like you can be expediting. And there's a trade-off with all things, which is like now you've got another channel coming at you from I need to be replying to stuff perspective, right? So the idea is I'd love to figure out what is the proper amount of discourse that can occur directly between a buyer and a seller, and at what stage is that allowed to occur. So for example, when an order occurs, when you check out, does it open up a chat with the PO number on it and everything directly to him at that time? Or does it wait until it's been delivered and then it creates it? So what is the best way to create this post-transaction flow? Like we know how to I think to say, just go down a list of like, okay, I want to create a dispute, there's problem, but I think there's a component of solving something is being able to chat together. So I guess we'd start there, which is like, what do you view as the components? As as a buyer, what would you like to be able to do?
I almost feel like it'd be fair to both parties if there's nothing, at least until the promised delivery date. Mm-hmm. So I feel like there should be a window, right? Hey, you accepted that it's going to be here this day, whatever. Right. I can't immediately think of a situation where I'd be reaching out before that time. It's like I knew ahead of time of what that should look like. So I would say until then, almost nothing, just to keep it fair, right?
Like guilty till or innocent till proven guilty,
right?
Kind of thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. Once you get to that point, it's kind of tricky. I don't know that is there a lot of times when things aren't.
Give me an example. What if something else hit your desk an hour later and you want to know if you could throw something on that truck?
Valid point.
Right.
That's tricky.
Right. And then, so what's the flow for you getting the piece on that truck? You've already checked out. Is it going to be the same purchase order? Or are you literally adding a line to an existing purchase order? So is it a change order or a new order?
Are you going to allow that though? Are they going to be able
That's part of the scope of what we're contemplating. Like in the old Bryzos, there was a lot of flexibility post-transaction, because you come to learn that when someone checks out, it's more of a letter of intent.
Yeah.
And the purchase order actually happens when it's all said and done. Like the PO is just sort of an intent and it's a promise, right? But so the old Bryzos, original Bryzos, had a lot of shortcomings, but the post-transaction features were pretty robust. Hard to use, but robust. But yeah, so the idea would be that when you're talking about an autonomous platform, people want to be able to do what they want to be able to do, and not be, how do I do that? So, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say right now, with how quickly a buyer can get through their checkout process, we've had several scenarios where it'll be like 10 minutes later, they're like, oh, I forgot a line. So they'll have to reach out to us to like add the line for them because we don't currently have that mechanism in place.
Well, I feel like that easiest route is just to allow them to go back in, create a change, and you just get a notification. Like
what if you don't have it?
Well, then, you wouldn't accept the change, right?
Well, those are things
So
like
do we put it out to the queue as just that line,
So
or
that's
does the
why
whole
you want
order
to
go
have
back
the chat.
into the queue?
It's just like, hey, do you have this?
Right.
Maybe they create it, it goes to me to accept. If I don't accept it, then it just becomes an order on the site. or if I do accept it, then it just becomes part of the that same PO.
Mm-hmm. So they would, instead of a chat, they could just try and tack it on.
Yeah.
You could see it, so you'd kind of get first look because you already have an order with them. And then if you don't have it, we'll take the rest of the order away with it. Put the whole thing out. No.
Sorry, Davis.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Look, all is fair, right?
I mean, that'd be ideal for the other sellers, right? But perhaps could be upsetting for other sellers. But the idea being
trick is like the pricing on that point.
Right. So he's like, oh, I can add this to this order and it's part of a bigger order. Might say yes, kind of thing. But once you peel that off and push that one piece out to market, is that really helping him?
Right.
Is there, just to kind of understand, once I go say place order, where does it go from there? Because I know you were talking about like drop times. What's
Right.
it currently?
So right now, when a buyer checks out, like you enter all your stuff, you click place order, and you get an order confirmation. That order now immediately flips over to any seller on our platform. It pops up as a new order in this queue, like a list of orders that are available for them to claim. And it sits in this like preview mode for 60 minutes where they can't do anything with it other than look at the lines, the delivery date, the destination. And the destination is only as specific as city, state, zip. After they review all that, if they decide it's a good order, they want it, it'll say like available at 11:02 a.m. So they know that's when it'll go live, and that button will now be clickable for them to say claim order. Once they claim it, whoever's first to click, they're going to get that confirmation from us, like this is your order now, go fulfill it. Enter it in your ERP, get your trucks moving, get that stock pulled. So there's the 60-minute lag time, I guess, arguably, that where now you've checked out, you can go do other things, that it'll show up on that date, and then the sellers are just waiting there to grab it.
We put an hour in just so people would have time, but
Yeah, it seems fair.
kind of keep it fair, and it's better for you because you want the largest population aware of what you're trying to do.
Right. Right.
And accuracy and all, there's a lot of reasons that went into that decision.
So this is like deceptive. I think sort of complex to. We gotta talk about the idea of change orders and okay, well, the idea of if you just want one line, he doesn't have it. Now you've got one line that needs to be pushed out to market. You're a buyer, you're like, oh shoot, they won't take it. I gotta go buy this somewhere, and it may not be the best buy you've ever made, right?
Right.
So it's like, how do you handle that? Not you. You've already bought it and went away at this point. So how do we? And we're asking you guys to help think through that, which is how do we handle, for instance, that one line in a way that's successful?
It's so tricky because I feel like I keep going to different solutions in my head, but then I keep coming back to problems, that would fall.
We'll talk. Also, think out loud a little bit.
Well, so with that timer that's in there right now, like, okay, maybe you put a timer on that order for the buyer and say, hey, you have 60 minutes to change it.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
But you still get to the issue of, okay, well, even let's say you do it in 58 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes might not be great for the seller to be able to check and verify that they have it or know that they can fulfill it. But also, I guess, if they didn't have it, even if you're in that window, you get back to the then what? What do you do with that one sheet that's just sitting out there?
Or another thing could be like, you never know, like you could buy something at 10 a.m. Sales guy comes over at 1 and it's like, hey, I need to get this bought, or whoever says you need to get this bought. And you're like, oh, they have that hour rule, which is, so now you have something that's really out of sync with the expectations of the industry, right? So it's surprising what leaves a bad taste in people's mouths, right? Which is like, the fact that I can't do that, it would have been just better if they'd not made it even an option, because I would have had a more clear path from the beginning. Now I've kind of have this bought on Bryzos, but not really. So that's another part. It's like you don't know when that change order is going to bubble up.
I think it makes sense that any change could be made pre-claim. If your order has not been claimed by a seller, you could make any changes without any punitive anything to anyone.
Yeah.
Do you think it should reset the clock?
I don't.
Do you?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I'll get your perspective. I come from the sales side, so I know, like, let's say an order went in, and 5 minutes after it went in, I was like looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, this is a great one for me. You know, maybe set myself a reminder to go back on when it goes live to claim it. And then in your example, you add something on 2 minutes prior. If I missed it, maybe, and didn't, whatever notification we give the seller, and I go in and just not even thinking, like, see the order and just claim it.
Right.
Now there's like,
That I think that would be the big hurdle, is just like accidentally missing something. I thought I could do the whole order, and now I can't.
Could there be some sort of pop-up that says changes were made to this PO? Please
Like from its original
re-review it. Yeah. Not that doesn't change, like, you could still not have that material,
No, right.
but just to make sure everyone would be aware of it at the same time.
Your PO drop time thing kind of solves this too,
Yeah.
though.
If you've taken an original order of 5 lines,
Yeah.
and let's say some hours later, 3 hours later, this line comes trickling through, and you do have it, but it's not like our pricing system didn't optimize that well that time around. Could you envision a time when you or a seller may be like, I kind of like this deal the way it is? I mean, I would think that could be a reality also, which is like, without that line, even though I totally have it, but you have no obligation to take it, could you see a salesperson being like, I kind of like the package the way it is?
In this market, I would be more inclined to add everything. Especially, I mean, it all just comes down to the price too.
Right.
You know, obviously, if it came through and like something was wrong with the price, I'll be like, yeah, I'm good. You can, good luck with that one.
that's what I'm asking, is like,
but
if
yeah,
it's-
it wouldn't. I don't think it would.
Would it have to be pretty egregious? I mean, like,
Yeah, we're more in, like, we are a service industry. Like, we're more inclined to help somebody than we are to not help them. And with the market the way it is,
but you made a point yesterday when we were talking about like types of orders and all the different ones that come through, where let's say it's one piece of flat bar. Right?
Yeah.
Like for a service center, they almost, like when we worked at American Piping, you knew that anytime an order came through, it cost American Piping X amount of dollars, period. They're the same way. It's like anytime a crane has to pick, whether it's one piece or, a whole bundle, like it's the same cost.
right.
And so now if like that adder, let's say it was a really nice order, let's say it's, a $10,000 order, but then someone adds like one piece of flat bar, and you're like,
And are you would it be the kind of thing you'd have to break a bundle for?
the salesmanship in me, like, I would think I would be more inclined to take it no matter what. If it's going to the same spot, and it's, if it comes through too, if it came up as a new order, I wouldn't be inclined to do it.
yeah.
Because there have been times when there was an order and it was like 2 customers, but they actually had the same zip code. And I thought it was one.
Going to the same place.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
I did. Yeah, I think it was something in Georgia like that. But I thought it was the same customer, and we accepted it. And it was 2 small orders. Or they were both in the queue at the same time. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, this is,
Right.
instead of 2 crappy stops, it's like one
Yeah.
normal size stop for us. But
You're like, nope.
never mind.
Well, if we added, so there are things about transparency that we talk about. And usually the reason we pull up on certain elements of transparency is not because we care who knows each other, because eventually you're going to know each other anyway, right? It's more about how much does it gum up the operations of the order. I mean, if people are able to get in, because on the buy side, we want them to have the experience of like, set it and forget it. You come in, you buy it, and you're gone. You don't have to deal with it at all. But there's the reality of orders, which is sometimes they don't go as planned. But for instance, what you just talked about, so in the old Bryzos, we used to generate a randomized vendor ID for each order, or we could say however we want to do it, but it wouldn't say Sherpa, it would say vendor AA. And then we could say, for a given 24-hour period or something, we could say, Sherpa's vendor AA today. So you'd at least know that if you see a second order come in and you're thinking it's one or maybe it's two, you'd at least have this or this buyer ID assigned to it, so you could know that these can go on the same truck, or there's an efficiency to taking that order. Does that help or not help?
Yes, it does for us.
And then what are your thoughts on what if on the sell side it said Sherpa when he claimed it?
Or infra.
Does it currently not say anything right now? They just see until the order's
Until
done
they
and
claim
through.
it, then they
Yeah.
know who the actual like complete
Yeah.
buyer and destination.
If you can see Sherpa.
Oh, I thought you meant if he could see who claimed it.
Well, yeah, I'm kind of there, but
I will say it has put us into some interesting situations so far, because we have a couple mail suppliers that we've been buying mail through for years
yeah.
that have now fulfilled through Bryzos.
Yeah.
And so they've come to us and been like, what is this about?
You're like, I was just going to ask you the same thing.
You're also on here.
So if there is a way to, so I would almost say keep it hidden in a way,
Yeah.
because it solves that, right?
Right.
Because
Plausible deniability.
because some of the times it's a better price, right? And so
Yeah.
we're gonna get the Bryzos, but the seller is wondering why we wouldn't just go directly to them, right? But if they could still see like an AA or whatever, just some randomized thing, not necessarily our name, I think that helps, and that kind of bridges that gap.
You have to have a turnover every day, so people they
Right.
wouldn't get to know who AA is.
Right.
So you would have to be changed before it was disclosed who you are.
Yeah,
Also, like you couldn't have it be AA and then it doesn't refresh, and then they learn through order confirmation who the buyer is in an hour, or like in an hour, and then 2 hours later AA buys something again. So you kind of would have pulled the veil off who. So
So
but the
really
problem-
we're only concerned about within the active queue, one vendor having more than one order in there at a time, and
we have to
identifying
think
that.
through it because there's complexity in there, because it just depends on how the order of operations lay down. But if you have Sherpa checkout as vendor AA, he claims that he now knows who AA is. And then he 3 hours later is like, change order or whatever, puts another one in if he's still AA, right? But the problem is, so you want to rotate that. But the problem is, if we want to solve the problem of him knowing it's the
Right,
same
in
vendor
one day
or
that's
buyer,
actually helpful because now he knows I
Yeah.
can send one truck with two orders.
From my perspective, it would be like it's way better for the company if I can accept multiple orders for them too. So if there was any way to just like have like kind of like the first dibs thing,
Yeah.
access to the order, even just a little bit, like 15 minutes in advance or something. That way you can just like continue, because it's always beneficial to continue to fill up a truck for one person.
And
Yeah.
That could be another seller incentive
well,
we
the
could
PO
have
drop.
for,
So, yeah.
yeah.
is there also some way to relate it to the actual order fulfillment, right? Because it's usually a couple days there that it's open potentially, right? You're not necessarily in the same PO
Right.
drop, whatever, but even if it's 2 days later, but they're still waiting on, right? The order's not going to be fulfilled for another 2 days. It's still useful to put it on there.
Yeah.
How could you bridge that gap? And
Well, I think one way to do it is through seller rankings, right? Which is the best sellers are usually the ones who are having first dibs or able to claim things. So the likelihood just by odds of that same one picking it up goes up just in that of itself. But to answer, if it's days later, how can they know? I don't know the answer to that. I'll have to figure that out. But I agree, there's efficiency in them filling out the truck and so
Right.
forth. But it also may, on a given day, may not be your best buy, even with them putting it on that truck.
right, and it goes back to the whole just inefficiency side of it.
Which part? Like of the industry in general, you mean, or
Well, no, specifically on like how you bridge that gap of change orders and whatnot, and how that timing all plays into it.
yeah,
I think it's all kind of one and the same problem.
it's almost So we're thinking about it. You know what is actually mechanically happening is you're basically buying again, right? Which is what we ended up with for this first release, which is like, if you are the type of buyer that you know that the day goes on and you have a list that's aggregating, you should soon learn that just buy at the end of the day, right?
Well, now being able to like save the PO or as you're going along, like
Create your shopping list.
yeah.
Right.
Because on our end specifically for us, we tend to do that. We'll stack them up a little bit, and instead of really quickly doing almost like spot buys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little tougher for us, I would say, because we're on the collect them all and know that that's our complete order, and then we do it again next week or whatever.
Right, yeah. And so we talked also about the idea of like if you have discrete POs, but you want to bundle them, right, as one purchase. So it only goes out as like one on the sell side. If they're all like kind, is the idea of just kind of aggregating everything you need. And that really makes it nice for you. At the end of the day, you just upload that, you hit buy, and you're done. Your purchasing's done for the day or the week or whatever. It just goes out to the sell side. So that one seller will be able to grab that whole week list, which it creates a lot of efficiency as well. But there are other issues that are inherently problematic with that, but that would be up to us to solve, which is the seller could be like, I like these 10 lines and I really don't like that line,
Yeah.
And so
This is kind of off topic, but have you ever thought about minimum order quantities or anything like that? Yeah, on the buyer side, right? not awesome, but I'm just curious how that.
Like every hour. Think about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's no, we talked a lot about that before we launched what you see today, and ultimately we could have spent a tremendous amount of time trying to really come up with what we think is a great solution, and it probably wouldn't be a great solution. So in the end, we were like, let's just get this to market, and we'll kind of learn, from both sellers and buyers around that topic, and which is what we've done. But yeah, it's something that we've been tossing around a lot of how we handle, whether it's minimum weight, minimum dollars, those sorts of things, because it does bring a lot of factors into play, mainly on the sell side.
Right.
Where every seller, every vendor has kind of their different requirement. Some they won't even touch an order if it's not more than 5,000 pounds. Some are just like, hey, it's got to be $500. Some don't care at all. As long as the price fits them, they're good with it. So,
well, I guess is that where the whole concept just kind of the marketplace sorts itself out? If it's not good enough, they're not going to accept it.
So there were a couple things I remember at the same time, which is the PO drop solves a lot of things. And so one of them is if a seller,
does he know about the
I kind of loosely explained it a little bit this
okay.
morning.
I get
So-
the concept.
the adage that, you take the good orders and the bad orders, right?
Right.
So a PO drop sort of solves this to a degree because it gives us a mechanism to reward a seller who took an order they may not like as much, which is, okay, for the next PO drop, you get to get into that early, and you get to grab, or I use the word nitro, like old video games, where you can like nitro yourself to the front of the line if you take an order, because until we're deciding still on what it is, but like, let's say you take an order that you don't love. We'll say, okay, well, you get a nitro for, $20,000 worth of orders. Until you claim $20,000 worth of orders, you will have that nitro.
You have a leg up above other sellers, basically.
Right? So when you do that you've been given in return the ability to go to the front of the line until you've claimed X amount of dollars of orders. And then you kind of go back to where your rank would settle you out. Right? So the PO drop organizes the sell side and gives us mechanisms for incentive. Because we don't want to be punitive in any way. It's all about, everything you do is about improvement. And but yeah, we think about it. And the other thing we thought at that time was, like, in hindsight, would we rather have this min order and have like no one going through, because everyone starts small, right? Mm-hmm. Or would we rather turn around in 6 months and say, yeah, we took it on the chin for a while, but people trust us now. So it was an easy choice when you frame it up in hindsight as to what we want to be. That makes sense. It didn't solve the problem though.
I don't know. I can argue both sides, honestly, because going, like with what we've done in the past, right, going directly to them, there usually is a minimum order quantity for a lot of our other suppliers. There's other ones that they'll sell you one sheet or whatever. It's just a terrible price. And so I would almost argue the whole, like, the market sorts it out thing fixes that, right? Where you say, okay, I know I'm ordering only one sheet. Like, this is a bad order. Someone accepts it, great. If they don't, well, and that's where it gets tricky. Of what do you do then? Does the price go up? Do you have to order more?
Well, my opinion has been that when a buyer's coming here and buying something that is bad, they know exactly what they're doing, right? Like, they are like, oh, Bryzos will take this order. Like, we're not stupid, right? Like, you're here because if you go to a normal vendor, they're going to probably turn you away. Like, we don't take that shit. So, I think there is room because it's a known thing typically if you're an experienced buyer that you're kind of here in some cases because you can do it. So for us to one day be like, all right, look, that's over. We're gonna get in lockstep with the rest of the market, and we're not just sort of where you go for your orders like that. So that's one approach we could have. Another approach could be like, look, it's just part of the game, and sometimes you take bad orders, but it's true. You get my good orders and my bad orders, but we have to be making sure we do get the good ones as well coming through to the sellers.
There's been a few instances of like repeat offenders where no matter how many times we're like, we understand there isn't an order minimum in the system that's going to stop you from putting in an $80 order, but like, please don't do that because no one's going to claim it. Where we've had to be like, okay, you're not listening. We're just going to leave it in the queue and we'll show you that like literally no one has taken this for 2 days. You're not going to get what you ordered. But on the global scale, we don't want to just continue to do that because arguably what we've told you guys as buyers is you can check out and literally not think about that PO again.
Right.
So like when I was a buyer, I would have to babysit orders all day long and have to expedite them and chase them down and make sure that what was received in was correct. And it's just like this never ending. You're literally not done with that until it's shipped off to your customer. It's like, it's exhausting. And if I would have had this and I knew I could just go in there, type in what I need and check out, and then I can go do 100 other things and that PO is truly off my desk and done, it would have been so nice. So we feel like it was a worse buyer experience and it's more to solve on the sell side to like incentivize them because we don't want to teach buyers like, well, I checked out on Bryzos, but like it might not get claimed, so I should probably check back in on it later this afternoon. Like we want you to just be able to be done with it and move on. So that's why we ultimately didn't decide like it's back on you guys.
Yeah, like the idea is just literally being able to hand your problem off.
Right.
You just literally hand it off.
And now it's Davis's problem.
So that was well, it's our problem to make it attractive to Davis.
Right.
It's up to us to be like, hey, this is what can we do?
Right.
To kind of equalize this on this other side. But when you're buying, you got your stack of stuff you got to buy. At least in our case, we'd have a physical folder that we get handed. We have to buy it, and basically you buy it, and then you put it on this side.
Yeah, right.
And you wait until this is a sure thing, maybe a day later, and then you hand it off. So the idea was you don't put it down here, you give it back.
Yeah, you're done.
You're done. Because if they're still putting it on this side of the computer, you're not really solving anything.
I will say too, I think this is still a lot of just kind of like old process coming in, but there is still a part of me at least when I do place an order where yes, I know it's going to come, but just because of how the metal ordering industry has always worked, it's like, is that right? Is that enough? Is this going to show up on time?
Mm-hmm.
It's just different, right?
Which is an interesting comment because the industry's mindset, though, is that there's not a problem until there is. So it's interesting. It's an inconsistency, right? Which is, I felt the same way, which is like, for some reason, I'd be like, well, just let me know if there was a problem, but I would still have it sit there, which is sort of strange.
Well, and I think from just human nature, given the size of our product scope currently, there's got to be stuff that you can't buy on Bryzos, that you've got to go elsewhere. So of all of the orders you're placing, 90%, 60%, whatever it is, might still have to be babysat like old school processes. And this
Exactly.
one you're like, I don't actually know. Like, we're good. I don't have to worry about that one. Just, you know,
Just
just like you got to stay in both modes because
That's exactly what I'm talking
Bryzos
about.
can't solve all the
Yeah.
problems just yet.
The house I grew up in, you guys are actually talking about, down the Central West End, was built right when electricity was becoming a thing. So we had sconces in our house that, wall lamps that had a gas line and a light bulb.
That sounds safe.
So, like, as that technology was inflecting to become electricity, they were putting both of these things in the same sconce because they didn't trust that the electricity was going to be stable or whatever. Like, when this thing's not working, we'll just get the lighter out and do that. So that's sort of what we're talking about.
That's where we're at right now.
We're in a limbo.
Yeah.
mode.
So,
Existing.
but as we know, like, there's not a gas line going to this lamp. So trust had to be built with the electricity and the stability of it, and that wasn't going to blow you up or something like that. So
Certainly.
that's where the idea of like the chat comes in, for instance, where it's just you can reach out and ping them back. You just want to know we're good, right? You got that? It's in process, kind of thing. That's kind of the idea as much as anything. It's just like, how do you kind of put a hand on it quickly and know that, hey, if something comes up.
Yeah, and I think really the chat's probably the easiest solution because you can kind of knock out everything in one there.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't need it, cool, you don't touch it. It's just there. But I guess it still gives you that open line just to check in if you need or whatnot.
And how would you feel if the communication could start both ways, right? So let's say an order's due to deliver on Friday, and we're here on Thursday, and the chat's open. Davis is the seller, and he's like, I got a problem, right? Like if we only have it open to where you can start it, he's got no way of telling you. And in our experience, not always, but the majority of time, buyers, they understand, like it's the steel industry, like shit happens. Usually, as long as they're aware of it and they can plan for it, unless it's just like mission critical, like I have to have this here Friday, which in that case, okay, now we look at different options. But usually you're like, all right, if it's here on Monday, I'm good. I can let my guys know in the shop. We'll do something else. So would you be open to opening it both ways to where that seller the day before or whatever can ping you and just say, hey, the truck's full, or we're not going to have a truck going there on Friday. Like, would you be open to that?
100%. I'd prefer that over it coming to Friday and it not showing up and being like, who do I email now?
Right.
Like, who do I call to figure this out? Again, because most of the time, we can work with it as long as we know.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, absolutely.
So my design brain is cranking. So if let's say you're someone who's in the app like once a week, because that's how you place your orders, where some people, maybe they're in it every day, maybe they use it once a month for stock or something. What's the best way to communicate that? If you don't have the app open all day, every day on your desktop, do you want it to be an in-app notification messaging, but it also shoots out an email or a text? Or like on our Teams, I think if I haven't read a message that was sent to me in the chat for like an hour maybe, it sends an email saying like, oh, so-and-so messaged you. What's like the best way to
exactly that.
contact you?
Exactly that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Email or text or both, you think?
Yeah,
Email?
email in our case too.
So, how do we? I mean, Davis is much more conscientious than most salespeople
True.
I know. He might reach out and tell you something's running late, but a lot may not. So we used to have an old Bryzos. We'd ping the seller and be like, hey, that's due at the buyer's, warehouse in a day or two. How's that coming? So we would prompt sort of them to look into that. And they can do with it what they want. And speaking of conscientious, we're very mindful not to over notify people of things. You guys have ERP systems, and hopefully, ops is sort of on it and so forth.
We can do the same thing because I think we get an email when the payment's coming too. So
Yes.
I would say the same thing. Just send a quick email the day before, like this is due tomorrow.
Yeah. What's funny is I started doing this manually like last month or month and a half ago, where I would start reaching out to sellers ahead of time just to be like, hey, this order's supposed to deliver on Friday. I just want to make sure everything's fine. And I don't think I ever had a response of like, no, there's an issue. But I receive responses immediately like, yeah, everything's set for tomorrow. The material wouldn't show up. Like, what happened? It's like, and they either didn't know or they didn't even bother to check. They're just like, they looked in their system and says, yeah, it still shows for tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
It's like this. I know. So I was manually kind of testing this to see, and
Wasn't exactly foolproof.
there's still issues that pop up.
I think you jinxed. I think I had one that didn't deliver too. You jinxed it because like it was
your fault.
right on target.
Well, I think a lot of people who run these businesses would be like, leave ops alone. It's going to get there when it gets there. Like a sales
That's how
guy.
I felt, man.
Yeah, well, not only that, but just like you focus on
Yeah.
getting your next sale.
It's not
Like,
broken
don't reach
yet.
down into the yard and then because inevitably, what happens in that conversation between ops and sales is sales finds out that it's not on target, and then they start saying, "Well,
Start muddying the
they start getting like, well, why not?" And then we'll say something like, "Well, you need it like right now," and like, yeah. It's like it's the most important order ever, and so we'll do something to accommodate that, and it really wasn't the most important order ever. And
then the 10 orders behind
Yeah.
that
so it's like that's why it is kind of what it is to a degree. It just kind of gets in line, and you really only want to ring the bell when you absolutely have to.
Is this something where the seller rankings helps, right? Because even if they say yeah it's on track and they don't deliver, cool, you get a ding on your record. You move.
Oh,
down
we
a little
joke
bit.
with sellers that, like, as we've had conversations about seller rankings, but like, when we flip the switch, you're in trouble.
Screwed.
But we're always mindful. It's kind of like what you're saying, but we were thinking about this. Like this is built in a prototype,
a year ago.
A year ago.
Yeah.
So it was really well thought through. And the concept came up with is it can't be punitive. So
you lose
if
points, you can only gain.
and this
points.
is sort of semantic, but like you can't lose points. You just start to fall behind in the race
right.
because other people are performing, and all of a sudden you're not. So you're still maybe moving forward at some rate, but the rate at which you're doing it slows.
And then at the same time, we were like, okay, well, we also need a reset button because you could have like service centers that are just like well-oiled machines, like really pull ahead, and these like mom and pop now have never have a chance to pick up anything, and they're like, well, this is monopolized by, we'll never have a chance to grab anything on Bryzos. So we're like, how do you only grab points, but we don't want anyone to have like 30,000. Everybody's got 100.
When you join, like if let's say we've been live for 2 years, a seller joins. How fucked is that seller? So like
Yeah.
he's
You
like
probably really needed them in that moment.
he's
Right,
75 laps behind the pack.
Yeah.
So it's like we say,
Where do
well, where do
you
they
start?
come in? So we decide
Yeah.
they all join at rank 25.
Yeah.
Which means that they have the ability to place dibs. But they quickly, so basically they'll get one shot, and if they fuck it up,
So I didn't get that level of detail. So basically it was like, so if you have like, let's say ranks 1 through 100 of sellers in our system. So it would be like, if a PO drop started at 11 a.m., like 11 to 11:01, seller 1, grab whatever you want. At 11:01 to 11:02, now you're thrown in a second. It's not like kicking out number 1. Now there's just 2 people in the pool, then 3, then 4. So each minute that passes, you got your 60 seconds, going in 60 seconds to grab any orders you want. So 1 through 25, and then the last 5 minutes of the 30-minute PO drop, it would just be anyone ranked 26 and above. Now it's just a free-for-all. Like, everyone's thrown into the same pool. So there was a perk to being a rank 1 through 25 because you kind of got, like, a more isolated time.
And the other idea is that, the way the industry works is if a vendor messes something up, they're not gone forever. You
Right.
put them in the penalty box for an order or two, right? Which is, you're going to need them again pretty soon, and you probably generally have a good relationship, but it stung a little, so you maybe pass them up on the next, opportunity or two, but then you kind of got them back on your list. So that's kind of the way it would work, which is kind of an analog of that behavior, which is, look, we still love you.
Well, it sounds like we're getting through PO drops, but I'm also thinking, like, the shitty order thing. Like, if Davis sees, well, I'm grabbing 12 orders, and just you're seeing that volume. Like, even if he does that throughout the day anyways, if you see it all in that volume basis, and you're like, I'll take that little crappy one because it's going near these other ones.
We would probably do something like, if you just grab 5 orders, or 4, like writing a PO drop, like, sorry, you got to take this one. Unless you're not getting those
Well,
4.
I guess you could link them.
Right. Like
We probably will. I mean, because if you're think about the value to you, which is in your company, which is in one fell swoop. And maybe you don't even have to be there. You've done dibs,
Yeah.
so you're not even there. So you're not even there to
You're,
make your sale.
Claiming the ones that you would take. If
You
they're
know, so it's
available.
like, okay, we got to tack on this order, but we have a PO drop in 3 hours, and you'll be able to do this again. And you know, so when you have the transaction velocity, obviously the orders that are less desirable become less important.
Yeah.
And
I
then
think-
buyers aren't dinged with order bins.
I think the thing that I would say is the same problem customers, like you said, are always going to be the same problem customers. And so you either like
Kick them off.
you kick
Deal
them
with
off,
them.
yeah,
Deal with them.
you kick them off, or you know they fall in step.
Yeah. We've had to
We
do.
have buyer
We've
penalty.
had to do
We
that.
had a buyer penalty box.
And even she mentioned it earlier where we've had like repeat offenders of, you know, just they take advantage of it that there's no minimum and they're placing like $150 orders, even though we've told them over and over, like, try to keep these above 2,000 pounds or $2,000. Like, right in your case where it's, you know, you're buying stainless or aluminum and those are higher dollar amounts, not weight. But instead of kicking them off, as she said, we've kind of gone back to them and just explained to them,
Sorry, no
You
one
think
wanted your shitty order.
you become accustomed to these, just like set it and forget it, you buy it and don't worry about it. Well, guess what? Now we're going to introduce, you have to worry about it in the sense of there's no guarantee now that a seller is going to claim your order. Because we work hard to make sure, even on bad orders, right? Where we'll reach out to a seller and be like, hey, you know, is this a good one for you? That sort of thing. Because we really want to make sure that buyer's being taken care of. But if someone's just repeatedly kind of breaking the intended rule, I'll reach out to them and just say, look, we don't have a minimum, but this order is going to sit here and I can't promise it's going to get picked up. And then I won't touch it. I'll just let it sit there. And that's happened a couple of times where it didn't get filled. And it kind of like, they learn their lesson like, huh. Yeah, I can go ahead and enter the order, but there's no guarantee that it's going to get filled, and that puts me in a bind, so maybe I shouldn't do that.
Maybe there's like a way that you could add like a reject button for the seller, where it's like that way if it got rejected like by 5 vendors,
Like auto cancels.
no, it just kind of like prompts the buyer and says like this order is like not matching,
Like add more
You know.
lines or something.
you know, or something like that.
That's not a bad
Then
idea
I would
at all.
definitely say we cannot show the buyer name because I think there will be just knowing biases within the industry. I think
don't
you'll
think
end up with like
knowing the sellers that or like the
their buyer's
I don't
name.
think like doing AA or whatever you're gonna do. I don't find that very valuable.
Yeah.
As long as it's the same zip code,
Yeah.
like
Chances are.
yeah,
Right.
I'm good. I'm good with it. I just got screwed
There's
on
one
one of them, and like
particular
I mean
time
I'll
it
take that in
happened.
step. It wasn't even really I got screwed on it. It just was like unlucky, really. You know.
That's the real reason he's here. Fucking vengeance. Yeah. Well, I like your idea, and
Yeah.
so you kind of don't even have to explicitly reject it. I mean, it kind of when everything else has
Sits
been,
there long enough.
no one chose to dance with him.
My,
So
my
it's
only
like-
point would be that it would just like create like a flow
Yeah.
that
to kick it back.
the
There's,
buyer
like,
could
triggers
kind of
that
just like
happen.
exactly.
But to build on what you're saying, which I agree with, is there is a place to assign probability to a buyer, right? Which is we have a matrix that assume it's 100%, but if you put in a shitty something or whatever, it's like we can just tell you right now, 10% chance that gets filled.
Yeah.
Which we toyed with the idea of doing that also, and through all these different iterations, and it always came back to what's the best experience for the buyer, which is if it's in our product scope, it needs to be something they can buy without thinking about it. You know, that's the ultimate experience.
Because you insert probabilities and now you're giving them the thought that like, well, maybe this doesn't show up every time
Yeah. So it's like the decision was made to be like whatever we decide in the product scope, it can get filled. And so as people get to know this program though and things are working, I think there's a desire to like I would have tried and bought it here and have that probability or hit that whatever it is. because it's easy to buy here. So if I'll live with the risk for 6 hours until maybe it gets picked up, and I don't know what the solution is, but I think there's room now than there was previously to introduce concepts like that. From the beginning, though, it just had to work, perfectly. But I'm like, well, this isn't a solution until it's a solution. I don't know. What's your sensitivity towards that, as far as like if you had, a product scope or something that we were less sure of, and you're entering a line, and it's like, this is a 60%er. I don't know if we're able to get this filled for you, kind of thing.
I think on like it could work on a per order basis.
Mm-hmm.
In the sense of there's a 95% chance this order will get picked up, right, or filled. Because at the end of the day, and maybe we're not like other buyers, but on a really small order, let's say, of someone probably abusing the system, but right, let's say I'm buying a single $85 sheet. It'll let me do that, and maybe it'll show up, but at the end of the day, I know, like, it's costing more in fuel to bring it here. They're losing money. And so that kind of probability, I think, I wouldn't be put off by it. So it's like, I know that's a bad order.
I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You knew what you
You
did.
get like a blaring warning sign. This is a bad order. You may or may not.
Yeah.
But
so what is
because
that?
I'd imagine as you just keep adding pounds, dollars, whatever, in theory, that should always just go up, right? I would imagine the bigger the order, it's pretty much going to get picked up for the most part. So
That's sort of been the theory. We haven't acted on it, but buyers know what they're doing.
Right.
And
Right.
they know that if the order sort of looks this way, this might happen. If it looks this way, something else might happen.
But I don't think it'd be bad to put it somewhere on there, because the way I look at it, right, if let's say I bring in a new guy and I'm showing him the system, showing him the software, inherently he wouldn't know that this is a marketplace that is like trading orders effectively, right? It looks like Amazon, right? which is good and bad. But I think there needs to be that understanding. Otherwise, over time, you might have some buyers that come in that don't know that concept.
And it's just
And
assumed
it's-
guaranteed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a really good point, because the thing that we've thought about is like, do we have to do this for every new buyer that comes on? Like, is there ever the end of the tunnel, like light at the end of the tunnel, which is at some point you've got to elevate, right? And say, okay, we all know what Bryzos is now, and you trust it, you've been using it for a year. Can we all just kind of get
Stop
back
with all the
to,
noise.
we all know what we're doing. And so that's the idea, is you create sort of this journey of sorts for buyers, saying, okay, you get one or two like test out the waters orders, but let's get real now, effectively.
Yeah, I think if we're gonna do something that's around assigning probabilities, it should only be done for the orders that we consider to be bad, right? We'd
Like,
have to,
you don't get like
we have to put a
this one's
stake in the ground,
100%,
whether it's
and-
the rule we kind of have right now, where it's 2,000 pounds or $2,000. If it's below one of those, like, then we show some message. But I really don't think it's a good idea to be putting probabilities in a buyer's head, even if it's a good one, right? And they add
Totally agree.
and they add, even
Just
if
causing
they add a
doubt.
The
shitty
default
line
is
to that
100.
order,
Right.
like, we don't want them to think this might not.
Yeah,
Because then they
Instill
just
any
every time they
doubt.
come here,
Yeah.
like,
for sure.
wonder if this one's gonna actually work.
But they should have that feeling in general. Like, what's the real probability when you order it offline?
Right.
I mean, there's a reason people keep this shit on their desks.
Yeah, for sure.
They don't.
always
something's
goes
gonna go
wrong.
wrong.
Yeah, I mean, there's like
Even
95.
down to
If you thought there was truly a 95% probability something was going to get filled, it wouldn't be on your desk and you wouldn't be thinking about it.
Yeah.
So you'd be like, 5% is a low probability of failure, especially you stack on experience and who the vendors and all this. It's like, so
There's
the
a message that says this number will never be 100%.
right, that's true. I mean, it will never. I think when I was buying, I was like 60% chance that shit gets here on time, and that would be from the best vendor. You know, so I think that the buyer confidence offline is typically not very high. And the reason they're able to sort of warm up to it is they know they can pick up the phone or they can email somebody,
Yes.
right? So there's really not comfort in buying, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if something's at 95%, truly, every buyer in the world would be here because that is a really high percentage of fulfill rate. Like, I don't know, I remember running on KPIs at American Piping. I hadn't seen a 95% fulfillment, accuracy or timing or anything like that. It was, all right, guys, this month we're going for 30%. So
Setting the bar
it's
high.
amazing how much uncertainty there really is. But the ultimate certainty is always that, look, we have a relationship with these guys, and that when it comes down to invoice dollars and stuff like that, that we're probably not going to end up sideways. So I think that ultimately that's the comfort, is that there's room for resolution down the road, right? So that's the trust piece that we have to continue to build out.
How are you notified, like offline, when you have a full day's worth of orders are going out and supposed to be shipped? Are you aware of those orders, or is it just like, I've sold them, I've set them up, my job is done?
Okay, well, fuck what happened.
I mean, you hit nail on the head. Yeah.
I think, and that's what the feedback
we
I
have,
get from
we have a
them.
shipping screen that populates with all the orders on it. So typically, what happens is I'll go through and check, and it'll say like customer A like 4 times because they have 4 different orders, and that's when I'm going through and checking that all 3 of their orders, or all 6 of the orders are on that truck.
Does it tell you if there was like a back order item?
It does after the load's left.
Yeah, that's the problem in the
Yeah.
steel industry,
Yeah.
and that's what I hear from
Was
other sellers I
there's
talk
no
Or
way
to.
to
in the
know.
structural steel industry.
Yes,
yeah.
Yeah.
pipe world's different.
Oh sure.
It was.
It is.
You knew, like I
You
knew.
knew.
And now, maybe
Well,
some customers
so
don't
our-
really
like-
care, but like
Yeah, they're
majority
picking,
of times.
the trucks are getting loaded between like 10 p.m.
Yeah.
and 2 a.m. So technically, that's when it's generating around. Like I'm getting emails like throughout the night, but I'm not.
You're not actively
But
monitoring
it's still
that?
no. I might, but my point really is like they're
Somebody
still
take a
doing
whiz
it.
or something?
Yeah, the guy that's entering it is still retroactive. He's entering it after the truck's been completed.
Yeah.
They couldn't find the material, and then he's going through like, we've done these 5 loads now. This wasn't on this truck, and this wasn't on this truck.
Literally just had a flashback.
I did too, and it
Whoa.
was PTSD. I did not enjoy doing
The
this.
pipe was different, I think. The majority of time, we didn't have that to where things were being loaded overnight. That's
We would typically call the salesperson
Yes.
and be like, is it okay if we
Yes.
back order line 7, or do you want to ship complete tomorrow, or whenever?
so you're notified like real time, and you
That's
kind
awesome.
of knew your customer pretty well. They'll be like, just ship it. He's fine with if we're
Another
40
trip,
feet
yeah.
short, or he doesn't. That's not a big deal. Or the opposite of like, I know this guy when he orders, if he says 1,000 feet, it's got to be at least 1,000 feet. So put another
We
piece on. there.
always verified.
So it was different. We were usually ahead
Yeah, that's
of
awesome.
issues.
I wish.
Structural. That's why I asked
So
you,
like
because
dream.
other feedback I've received, because it was frustrating. Like when problems were happening, like how are you not telling us that this is happening? And the guy's like, I don't even know about it.
And I guess
Yeah.
part and parcel of that, though, is that the energy sector isn't as regionally based as structural. You're like, hey, we have a route truck, we'll drop it off tomorrow. Usually we're getting a dedicated flatbed that's going to go 800 miles, and you really want to be sure of what's on that truck.
Yeah. That's a good habit.
It's an expensive mistake. If
It
you
is
just
expensive.
make an assumption, then you're like,
Well,
we
that's
gotta ship 20 feet to
we
the guy
do.
now.
We spent a boatload. Oh, that would be another thing that probably drive, like we were talking about yesterday, drive like the average order size. Like because of back orders, it probably also drags that number way down,
Oh, interesting.
because there are times when we're going back with a flat bar to one customer.
But you consider that a new order in your system or something?
I kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, Reliance probably does.
Yeah, because you have maybe already invoiced.
Yeah.
That
Well,
order
some
so
of
you
them,
didn't have-
sometimes we'll do like a back ordered shipper. Sometimes you just cancel that line and put it on a new order. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's ways around all of it. But
Typically, once something's invoiced,
Yeah.
It's
You're
no
getting
longer
new orders.
accessible. Yeah.
And you can only
In our system, it's the reverse. Like if it hasn't billed, we can't generate. Like let's say it shipped out Tuesday, it didn't go on that truck, but we turn around and ship it Wednesday. Typically, we'll add it. Like it would be a new order at that point because it hasn't actually invoiced yet. But
Right.
so in our system, like it can't until it's like shipped, marked, delivered, billed, everything. We can't generate that other paperwork that we need.
I mean, that makes sense. I remember answering questions like, hey, I've got this, got to get this on, add to this order. Should we do a, change order or new order? It's like, new order is always preferable because you
Yeah.
want an order to be static
Exactly.
as it goes through ops.
And that's what I was gonna say about like adding an item later. I feel like it is almost just better
So just put a new order in.
to just have a new order. And
Yes and no.
yeah.
Right?
Well, I mean that way it's just like it's all a single transaction.
From his perspective, I'm
Yeah.
speaking for you. If buyers want it to be on a single PO, if it's genuinely part of that purchase, right?
Yeah.
Sellers seem less sensitive to that, but I remember when I was buying, no, I need to add this to this specific order because the cost, the way the ERP works, is that cost is getting automatically assigned into that sale on the sales side. So we want to be properly accounting for the cost of the material because our ERP is going to link them by PO number and sales order number.
Yeah, I guess it's just at this point, like, what are you targeting? If you go with the Amazon, the ease of use, checkout in a breeze like that, you are entering a million different orders on Amazon. Like most people are not doing like, oh, I'm gonna add this to my cart and like check out.
Well, on the business side, when you go to Amazon Business, it's structured differently. So they do this. All these, it's when you go through that, you're like, oh my God, they were here when we did original Bryzos. They still offer ideas. No, but when you go to Amazon Business, which we recently have for buying some cameras recently, but anyway, they have it all structured out like that, which is like you're creating your shopping list throughout the day and all this stuff. And so the question is, it's form versus function, always. And we've kind of decided it's just, it has to be dependable and lightning fast. And whatever we can add to that formula without sort of sacrificing those two things, we'll add in. But anything that sort of sacrifices that, it's learning to not be worth it. Because no one's explicitly bitching about what we have.
True. Right?
So you could argue, don't do shit. Like, we'll figure it out. Our intention is to not upset the apple cart. But there's nothing on the post-transaction side, for instance, which I think buyers and sellers, look, here's the whole thing. No one knew that they would like this until they had it. So, it's kind of hard to say what is additive and not additive. And even internally, there were things like, that's not going to work or whatever. We put it out and it's like, there they are, it is working. So it's so hard to know until you are using something. Now, like, I get it now. But for things that are done that are working, I don't think there's a lot of appetite for messing with it to a degree. Unless people are explicitly when something is genuinely disliked because it finds us multiple times a week, where like you keep hearing the same stuff over again. And when you're developing things, you have to decide what are preferences and what are needs. And needs are the things you hear from multiple buyers or from multiple sellers, not from, hey, it'd be nice if, this. But if you hear it in different, maybe articulated differently. But if you're hearing effectively the same thing, probably should do something about it.
To go back basically to the beginning of this, in terms of the actual dispute process, if that comes up, luckily I don't think we've had anything yet, but have you seen, I think it's eBay, their dispute process? It's basically, if you have a problem, you go through a little form, you're right, like, I didn't get as many as I was supposed to, or it was broken during shipping, whatever it is, and then it gives the seller like a timer to reply within or create a resolution. And so you can go back and forth with these timed responses. And if, let's say the seller didn't respond in that time period, okay, well now eBay is going to step in and provide a resolution. whether that be
So they were a mediator or arbitrator.
Exactly. Whether that be they want more details or they're just like, yeah, this is clearly a problem. Buyer, you get your money back. Seller, you're not getting paid for this, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
I'll
that,
look at that.
in my mind, is a decent way to kind of have buyer seller go back and forth first, potentially, without you having to step in. But if they can't reach something or someone isn't wanting to play, that's when you would have to potentially be that
Arbitrator.
middleman. Yeah.
I'll think through that. I mean, I like that idea, and it's similar in ways to what we had in the original Bryzos, and the risk being that if you say sorry, you're not getting paid this time, and they're keeping your shit, like yeah. So
That's the problem.
but your idea is the right one, which is how do we kind of expedite these, and we've talked about this, which is the term dispute has a negative connotation. Most times it's just an invoice reconciliation. Like we're 100 feet, we got 103 feet. 90% of the time, if not more, it's just like, hey, we just want to make sure people are getting paid the right amount.
Yes.
No one's actually upset or anything like that. It's within industry norms. So most of it is just totally fine. But there are some, and that in the previous version of Bryzos, if they got the loggerheads, we just let it sit till somebody figures it out, and eventually we'll get settlement instructions, and it'll be sent out the way. But we stayed out of it. For attorneys are like, probably not your best idea to get involved, but you're right. I mean, it helps expedite it.
Well, to some extent, we are involved now just simply because they don't have a route to do it themselves right now anyway.
Right.
So Lee's getting stuck in the middle of coordination. And we basically used the last year to learn all these kinds of feedback things, like what's working, what's not working, what needs to change, what doesn't. And now we can take those and say, out of a team of 4, hoping that we scale this into a ton of users, what can we automate that no longer, like the team of 4 arguably couldn't handle themselves on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
We got to put all these things in place to make it work for you guys without us touching it.
Yeah, which brings us back full circle, which is the idea of a chat, and it's kind of those things. I think that people who use it, generally speaking, are not shysters, and if they're created on a per purchase order level, so it's not just like this, turn into just kind of roadhouse kind of thing. Like, I think it would be productive, and I don't think it would be overused. I think that because the scope has been brought down to a purchase order, it won't feel sort of carte blanche. It'll feel like, okay, use this for this. And then it kind of, when the order is paid, everyone's done, it closes it, archives it, and it's there.
Well, and the other added benefit at this point then from the buy side is they don't actually even know who's fulfilling their, right now as it exists today, they don't actually know who's fulfilling their orders until a truck shows up and they get an invoice. And they're like, oh, cool, I guess Metals picked up this one, So at this point with the chat, if that opens the day of the delivery date or whenever that window makes sense, you'd be like, you know before the truck shows up who's supposed to be taking care of that for you too. So you get a little more insight into that.
Unless he's like, oh shit, it's Davis. Yeah, hoping he wasn't going to pick that one out.
Well, do you even have to wait? So if an order is entered, a seller claims it.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, if a chat is created, you don't even have to put you're chatting with Metals. You can just have a thing there, a chat box.
Yeah.
You still don't even have to go through the thing of labeling who the seller is, labeling who the buyer is. I get my order acknowledgement. I know what I need to know.
I mean, I don't know how people will be like, who is this?
Yeah.
I think the element you get by
People
kind
are
of
more inclined to
declaring,
use chats if they know who's on the
right, because it might, with all the chat GPT AI bot, it might be more comfortable for them to know they're talking to a human that can solve their problem quickly and not a Bryzos bot behind the
No,
the
I do
app,
think
you
should
know?
just generate and be names. That's my thing.
Hours up, guys.
All right.
Thank you. That was awesome. I don't know. I think we got a sense of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
That's
should
helpful
come
to
by
have both
once a
of
week for.
Fly out every week.
We can get a monitor and put it in the chair.
There we go.
That's what we usually find is there's this push-pull
Right.
where we're like,
You
oh,
fix
we really
one
need to put this in
person's
place for the
problem.
buyer, and then I'll chime in and be like, seller's gonna hate it. I'm telling you, and it's like,
As soon as you start,
Less is more.
yeah, as soon as you start implementing all these other things, it just becomes, I'm just buying it through Bryzos.
Yeah.
I'm not
Mhm.
buying it
So
from
the process is
Bryzos.
still the same.
Yeah.
Shep always tries to remind us, is like, DocuSign literally does a single function, but they are the masters of it. Like, just stick with
That
what
is
we
true.
know. Every time we're like, ooh, this would be cool, we're like, just stay in our lane.
Yeah.
Yeah,